Um, so again, hey, my name is Eric Knutson. I'm a full-time cycling coach. I've been riding for about 19 years, but for most of that time, actually, I was in the corporate world. I was with Hewlett Packard. Started as an engineer, and then I moved into program management. So most of my experience is actually living the life of an everyday cyclist, just kind of like you guys, with work travel. Started a family, and cycling is more of a hobby and more of a side thing for me. And that's most of my experience. I pretty much tried everything and have been through lots of very challenging life events where cycling was always kind of like a side thing. And that kind of makes me a little different from some of the other coaches out there where they started in cycling and this is all they've done. It's really not the case for me. So I have kind of a unique perspective on what we need as everyday cyclists to get results and to be engaged and really have fun in this hobby. And so this is what I've come up with. So this is the strategy. This is how I do it. This is what we're going to talk about. We'll use base training as an example. I think it's a really good place to start. But basically, there's four things here. The first thing I do is I build an annual training plan. And I always use a spreadsheet. I don't use special software for it, just Excel or Sheets. This is really important. This is much more than a calendar. There's kind of four key areas of my ATP that I've come up with that make it really effective. The first, obviously, is any annual training plan will always have your target race or event. And then this is where I set my training blocks. And this is where I decide my patterns. That is a new concept that most coaches don't talk a lot about. And this is where I set my ramp rates. From there, my annual training plan, after that is where I get into planning my next block out with specific workouts. So I use Training Peaks. For this system to work, you do not have to use Training Peaks. You can use anything you'd like. But there's kind of like three key steps in this process. The first is just to decide on your pattern, and that's actually just transferred over from your annual training plan. Then we set workout time in zones, and then we adjust our zone 2 workouts to hit weekly TSS goals. And I'll show you like exactly what this looks like. But then you just ride your bike, record, follow the plan, and you post to Strava. And then the fourth step is really to make minor adjustments. When you're self-coaching, minor adjustments are key. So I want to stress that this is pretty value-packed. It will be recorded and posted, but I just kind of encourage you to turn off distractions. I'm going to go kind of quickly, but just pay attention. So I want to talk about first kind of what a lot of us might look like. And I've talked to a ton of cyclists. I have interviewed many, many cyclists. I've been there. I get it. I've been on this left side as a unsatisfied cyclist for a long time, so I get it. It almost feels like it's a rite of passage to try out a lot of things on our journey, but a lot of us here on the left sometimes we follow plans. We've had periods of feeling really strong and then not. We've never really fully experienced our full potential. We've had periods of burnout. I certainly have myself. Period of life distractions, and that's pretty normal. There's kind of like a deep-seated kind of disappointment in your fitness and where you're at. You depend on group rides quite a bit for maintaining fitness. Your weight will fluctuate quite a bit. And this type of cyclist I've seen a lot, and I have seen a lot. There's a very high chance that you end up quitting the sport. I've seen so many cyclists that I used to ride with end up quitting because they're just kind of unsatisfied. They have motivation issues. And then you have these consistently fit cyclists. I'm sure you guys can all think of those types. Basically, they've kind of figured out what works for them. They've got a lot of experience. They've developed a genuine passion for the sport. And then they don't rely on discipline or motivation or really other people to keep themselves fit. They have a process that works really well for them, and they just have a little chance of ever quitting. So one thing I did want to stress is that we're all kind of, whether we're like just consistently fit or just kind of unsatisfied, We all do this for the same reasons, just for mental and physical health, and we all love it. So it kind of brings up an important question is, and why do we do this? Why do we ride in the first place? I don't think it's to increase our FTP. But these are some of the reasons. I'm sure you can think of more, and these are things that I've heard from you and all the interviews that I've done. It's our therapy. It's our time to clear the mind. This is a really important one for me. Solve complex work problems. You'd be surprised at how many people solve complex work problems when they can just kind of be at peace on their bike. You get alone time, time with friends, just the freedom, the adventure, the physical health, longevity, VO2 max, high correlation with longevity if you've seen some of the Peter Attia YouTube videos out there. It's great to just be involved in something, breathe fresh air. The gear is awesome too, carbon wheels and all that. That's kind of part of it. But there is a good portion of us here that it's also all about the challenge and feeling of accomplishment. And so it's for these types of people, when you need the challenge and you need to feel like you're accomplishing something, that you also need results. So, so for me, one of the things that kind of messed me up when after about 8 years of riding is I enjoyed doing all of these things here, but I wasn't getting results, and that kind of put a damper on the whole activity. Is when I felt like I was getting slower, I was gaining weight, and climbs were just getting harder and harder. It just kind of made it not as fun. So for me, after 19 years as an everyday cyclist, this is kind of my thing. Ultimately, we ride to improve our quality of life. That's kind of like our why on why we ride. So you would think that we'd be super consistent, but for whatever reason, that's not the case. We become frustrated with it because of lack of results or not knowing what to do, or we push it to the side, naively thinking that it isn't important, and I certainly did that myself. We come up with a million excuses for not getting and staying fit, and these excuses hurt us and the loved ones around us because our health suffers mentally and physically. And it does suffer when you're not keeping yourself physically fit. This sport, for me, is so much easier to fall in love with when you're able to find a process that works for you. For many, the answer is not depending on plans, apps, coaches. Those things actually help you a lot when you're just learning, but ultimately you have to figure out how to train yourself in the long term. We all want to ride our bikes on our own terms. I think that's really important. So you want to be crushing in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I haven't talked to a single cyclist that doesn't. So at some point you got to figure this stuff out. And just a heads up, at the end, I want to share a different type of coaching model that I think is going to work really well for certain cyclists that are in this for the long haul and who may be stuck right now and kind of tired of doing the same old thing. That model involves actually teaching you how to map out your own training for a whole year and all the details. Like I said, it's taken me years to simplify this process, and I think that enthusiastic cyclists should know this stuff. So since this concept is so different, I realize that planning your own workouts may sound pretty daunting and not worth it, and that is definitely the feedback I've gotten. So I want to demonstrate what that process actually looks like in BASE. So is it a game changer? Perhaps. It's something that I am very excited about. So stay until the end for Q&A. Let me see. Okay, good. Everyone's still on. So stay at the end for Q&A. Before we dive into the actual tactics, I think it's important to go through a little history lesson on what qualifies me to deliver this information to you, so you have a little bit of confidence. And here's a little story. This is me in the early days when I first started riding. I actually started in 2003 to shed a few pounds. I gained quite a bit of weight in the first few months after getting married. But I knew it was for me. My very first mountain bike ride in the Boise foothills. It was I just absolutely loved it. It was fun. I loved the health benefits. I was starting to lose weight. And so I thought I'd teach myself something with Joe Friel's book, The Cyclist Training Bible. I don't know what revision it's on now, but my version was the second version. I became obsessed with how to apply the science. That has been my thing with cycling, is how to apply the science. I don't really know why I'm so obsessed with it, but I am. So at the time, I actually built a really fancy spreadsheet and I shared it with Joe Friel. He was the author, and I basically told him in an email, I'd love to work with you to build software to do this. He said no, but Training Peaks came later. I think he had obviously already been working on Training Peaks, but if you look at that spreadsheet in Training Peaks, there are some crazy similarities. So if you ever want, I'm happy to share that spreadsheet with you. But so the process of training was a blast, but I didn't see great results, to be honest with you, through this process that I had. I was only using heart rate. At the time, like literally nothing was known about training with power. So through this process, what I learned was when you don't see results, it's really hard to sustain. That was what I got out of the first 10 years of riding. I actually burnt myself out for training for the High Cascades 100. It's a 100-mile mountain bike race. I was using heart rate only, and after that, I decided to just ride for fun, like many of us say. But I ended up putting a lot of focus on my career after that. So then we're into 2015 or so. My career started taking some serious blows. It was absurd. And I had let myself go, but I started riding regularly just for that escape from it all. And it just made such a huge difference in my mental state of mind as I was trying to sort through all this stuff. And I realized that I just needed cycling again, this time for the long haul. I could not burn myself out again. So this is me. Here's a picture, 2021. I had started riding with power, obviously before 2021, but man, it just opened up a whole new world for me, whole new world of possibilities. I started following plans, I saw results, and I realized that I had spent years of riding incorrectly, and that's ultimately why I had burnt myself out. So after following plans, I did everything. The Trainer Road, the apps, all kinds of different methods. I hired a coach. These things actually started getting old for me, and I started losing my enthusiasm toward it. And I realized that my old way of training was actually a lot more engaging. I actually had more fun with it. I was more empowered. I had control over everything. I had flexibility in my schedule. And so I decided to shift back to my old way of planning stuff, but this time using power. And the results were just awesome. And so it got to the point where career was still not going all that great. And I just really felt this calling to actually just help other cyclists with what I knew. And that's kind of when trail cycling was born. It was actually right when COVID was first starting. I remember specifically hearing the news out of China, and that's when the trail cycling was born. So the results my athletes have seen have just been awesome. There's nothing more personally gratifying for me than helping cyclists in this way, but and just seeing them get strong. But here is the thing: is my biggest problem starting as a coach is I was spending hours designing custom plans for my athletes. I can be a little bit of a perfectionist, and for me, everything had to be just right and calculated. And my system that had just been working for me was too complicated at scale, so I had to come up with something new again. And for me, it had to involve as little thought as possible, be fast, and still insanely effective. Be efficient so you can ride more. I would rather ride my bike than sit behind a computer. So that's when I'm about to show you this whole system was born. It's what I use on my athletes and myself. So I want to stress that I started from zero. If you're kind of like doubting where your capabilities and your potential, I actually started at around 200 pounds. I got winded just walking up a flight of stairs. I was 27 years old. I was on blood pressure medication and all sorts of other medications. I was not on a healthy plan. I want to really stress that I was never an athlete. I spent years being unsatisfied with my fitness when I was in the corporate world. And so this is really why I'm so passionate about sharing this system. It's helped me get and stay fit. And I think it's really changed my training completely. So I just want to show you the results, kind of like my numbers. It feels a little weird sharing this data. It's a little personal, but I think it's important just so that you can, just for credibility's sake. But I'm I'm 47. This is just from 2022. I'm down to I'm about 150, 157, kind of in that range, and I've been there for quite a while, over 5 years now. My work-life balance is about 11 hours a week, so I'm not doing crazy hours on the bike. My 20-minute power is still rising. Here at 47, it's still it goes up by about 8 watts every year. Right around 341 watts for 20 minutes. And I can, I tested this in March and in August, so it's not like a fluke thing. It's kind of sustainable. My 5-minute power is also still rising. It keeps on going. It's above 400 watts every time, and I'm kind of getting into the 420s range now. And 1-minute power is still going up. Last time I tested was 640, probably about a month ago. But here's the most important thing: is that it's more than the numbers for me. It's that I just cannot wait to go for a freaking bike ride. It's 6:20. I won't be able to ride after this because it's kind of late, but tomorrow I'm planning a ride, and I'm just really looking forward to it. So my athletes, I'm not going to obviously share their numbers, but they see similar PRs. It's just I get these little notifications on my phone when someone scores something awesome, and it is really fun to get. This stuff, I get it all the time. Everyone's just constantly getting new PRs, and everyone has these beautiful performance management charts. This is not something that you really need to know, honestly, but if you want to kind of hear more about what some of my athletes say, you can go to trillcycling.com and then /about if you want to read a little bit. So, okay, how's everyone doing? I hope everyone's well. We're good on time, 20 minutes. Okay, so let's get into it. Okay, these are actually the steps. So we're going to get into the actual training and what you came here for. Like I said, the first step is building your annual training plan. This is a game changer for me. It's your map to tell you the direction of where you're trying to go and how you're going to get there. It's kind of like your air traffic controller. I do this, I don't actually mess with my annual training plan very often. It doesn't actually take that long, but I'll kind of show you what makes an annual a good annual training plan. And this is me talking here. It assures, the first thing is assures that you have a correct level of progressive overload. So progressive overload is just when things are getting harder and harder and harder. So week 1, you ride 100 miles. Week 2, you ride 125, that kind of thing. But we're not doing miles. There's actually 3 ways that I try to incorporate progressive overload. The first one is an TSS increase every week. We also want to increase your time and zone for what I call aerobic intervals, which is your sweet spot tempo. It actually is applicable for threshold workouts and long zone too. And then we also increase the difficulty of our patterns. And I'll show you what that means. But it also makes sure that your training schedule works with your work, family, race events. I always have family events on my annual training plan so I can know where things kind of land. It assures that you're targeting the correct energy system at the right time. So if you don't have something like this and it's January and you're just hopping on Zwift and you're thinking, I'll just do a Zwift race because I've got an hour, then I can pretty much guarantee that you're not targeting the right energy system at the right time. So, and it also assures that you're getting appropriate level of recovery and rest. Within each week, you should always have 2 days completely off the bike. That's kind of where I've landed after all these years, is 2 days off. And then within each training block, 1 full extended recovery period that usually lasts a week. So, okay, that's a lot to remember. So I've simplified it into these 4 basic steps right here in this blue box. And I'll show you what that looks like. We're going to target a race. We're going to set our training blocks. We're going to set a ramp rate and decide patterns. And that's it for an annual training plan. So this is what my annual training plan looks like. This is just a screenshot from my spreadsheet. I know this is kind of hard to see, but I'll just kind of talk through it. The first thing I do, and like I said, this is more than just a calendar, but it certainly is a calendar. is I set a target race or event, usually an A priority race. In here, I just put May 6th, my big event, and I work backwards from there. You don't have to have a big event or a race to really kind of take advantage of proper training like this, but it's always fun to put something in there, even if you don't want to race, if you want to do a big century ride of something, just so you have something to work towards. And then I work backwards from there. This is where I set my training blocks. You can see B here. Let me show you my mouse. Here we go. So I set the type of block that we're going to do. And really, you don't really need to. Honestly, I only have two types of training blocks. I have what I call aerobic training blocks and anaerobic training blocks. Anaerobic training blocks are obviously that high intensity polarized type stuff. We're doing high intensity VO2 intervals. And aerobic is more where all your efforts are under FTP. So your tempo, your sweet spot. So I work backwards from there. I have some rules for these blocks. And when you work backwards from there and you have all your recovery weeks, you get to a point where you're actually in today or whenever you actually want to start getting back on the bike. And you have a plan, kind of rough outline here. The next step is to set ramp rates. Oh, actually, let me do a quick note on training blocks. If you are a student of Joe Friel in the Cyclist Training Bible, this is traditionally how they tell you to do it. And there's actually a lot of books where you're doing phases and you're doing your base 1, base 1.1, and you're doing all these bases and build blocks and races and all this stuff. I've actually simplified it. I actually don't call base training anymore, believe it or not. I just call it aerobic training, because really you want to, base training is the kind of thing that you want to do year round. So I just call it aerobic training. Like I said, I do it year round. I'm doing aerobic training, I guess you could call it base 2 in August. And for me, it just it feels a little better to just call it an aerobic block. And then I have an anaerobic block like I was talking about. And then I have two other phases that I don't use often, usually only once a year. And those are reserved for like an A priority race when I'm trying to really, put in when I'm serious about it. So I'll do like a 2-week overload and then maybe a 2-week taper. So that's my simplification. Here's my rules. Aerobic blocks, no more than 3 blocks in a row. Anaerobic blocks, no more than 2 blocks in a row. You actually kind of reach your peak anaerobic fitness in 4 to 6 weeks. So if you just remember no more than 2 blocks in a row before going back to an aerobic block, you're good. Recovery weeks, not negotiable, goes with every block. Overload, like I said, used cautiously, not more than 2 weeks. And then a taper is always after 2 weeks of overload. This overload and taper process gets a little more complicated, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. So the next step, like I was saying, is to set ramp rates. Very, very important. Ramp rate, it's just a number that kind of signifies how much TSS you're increasing each week. TSS, if you're not familiar, is just a number that's indicative of how much stress you've incurred on a certain ride. When you add up all of those numbers, you'll have a weekly TSS score. And that's what we're really paying attention to on your annual training plan. We want to increase that stress a little bit every week. We don't want to just go out and crush as long as we can. We want to do it methodically in a way like this, where we're increasing it a little bit at a time. So I recommend, if you're just starting out, 3 or 4, ramp rate, or 3 or 4. Calculating this stuff, I do it automatically in my spreadsheet. It can get, if you can't calculate ramp rate, you can actually find it in Training Peaks. It's not necessarily straightforward. But what you could use in lieu of that is just your weekly TSS, and just increase that by about 5% a week. If you want to just start there, you're good. And I would start, if you're just kind of like, you've been riding a little bit, just start off with a goal weekly TSS of around 400, and then just go up about 5% a week. But when you do this, you can see what happens is I'm setting a ramp rate for all of these blocks, 3, 3, 3, recovery I go down -5, and then I'm doing 4s, and then I always have my recovery. I'm actually giving myself target weekly TSS goals, and it's already built into my annual training plan. This actually calculates where my CTL will be, but it's really simple because I'm just putting in a single number and it's just calculating it. Okay? So then the last step in your annual training plan is to decide patterns. Oh, I have a little slide here on quick note on ramp rate. This is just a number that represents TSS. Like I was saying, you're increasing per week. Know that everyone is different. Here are some guidelines for you on ramp rates. If you're really curious, 2s and 3s are not too hard. 4 and 5 ramp rates are harder. For me personally, I can't handle much more than 5 multiple weeks in a row. And then 6, 7, and 8 is your hardest, and this is your danger zone. But one thing that I wanted to point out here actually is that we are all different and we can handle things differently. And so when we talk about individualizing your plan, this is one of the areas where you can do it. So I have an athlete that's been with me for a couple of years, and we have discovered that he can handle high ramp rates. As long as he's getting recovery, he can handle hard stuff. And so this past year, what we decided to do ahead of time was give him some really hard, like 7s and 8s, like multiple weeks in a row, and he was able to handle it. And it was really fun because we were tailoring his training like strictly to him. We were actually increasing his time in zone as well. And this is when we're talking about individualizing stuff. And the results is he's basically podiumed every race that he entered. It was really cool to see. So you'll figure this out as you start doing this kind of stuff yourself. You'll kind of figure out what an appropriate ramp rate is for you, and that's when this stuff gets really fun. So the last part of an annual training plan is patterns. I have what I call a 3-2 pattern that I recommend all athletes starting with, unless you have a really weird work schedule. But it's basically Mondays and Fridays off, and then 3 days in a row on the bike, and then 2 days in a row on the bike on the weekends. Even if you only have 5 hours a week, I still recommend doing a 3-2 pattern. You should at least be able to ride Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday for an hour. And what that will do is that will get you in the habit of riding frequently, and then it's much easier to start adding time rather than adding days. So what I have with these patterns is all I'm doing with this, I know this is very hard to see, is I'm specifying the type of ride that I'm going to do. I'm not going into a whole lot of detail, but I'm saying what type of ride I'm going to do. So this pattern here, I have a zone 2 on this Tuesday, if you can see my mouse. Wednesday, I'm going to do a sweet spot. Thursday, I'm going to do a zone 2. Saturday, I'll do a long zone 2, and then Sunday, another long zone 2. So this is a pattern. The next block after that, I'll make that pattern a little harder. I'll have sweet spot, zone 2, sweet spot. The next block after that, I'll have that pattern even harder, where I'll have sweet spot, where I have back-to-back days. This is really cool for making some faster adaptations rather than just keeping the same patterns. So let me go to the next slide. So like I said, recommend a 3-2 pattern. This is actually more important than time, in my opinion. Your body, this is kind of how this works, the theory behind this, but your body adapts to consistent training stimulus. And then after it has adapted, you want to change that training stimulus. So you don't want to keep on doing the same thing every time, but you do want to give it something that's consistent. So this is a method for doing that seems to work really, really well. I wouldn't worry too, so I'd never ever put in the details of what type of workout, but here you can see a little bit more clearly in this 3-2 pattern. These are some of my favorites in aerobic, but I have lots more that I use depending on kind of like how an athlete is doing. I have, if you go to, let's go to the harder, where we have a sweet spot, zone 2, sweet spot, and then we have long zone 2 and tempo. For example, if you seem to be struggling quite a bit with sweet spot, you'll know that you're struggling to hit your power numbers, all you have to do is change that pattern or change that workout to a tempo, and it's just as effective. Maybe not quite as effective as Sweet Spot, but these are the kinds of things that when you really start learning how this stuff works and how you can do it on your own, you can tailor this stuff to something that really works well for you. So this is actually what it will look like in the end. With all that stuff filled out, you can see that it did not take very long to do all this. Really what the most time-consuming thing is figuring out your event dates. But I like to also have in here a little block on the very top of why I ride, to keep me reminded that it's really not all about my numbers and chasing this FTP and all of this stuff. It kind of helps me to stay grounded on the whole point of why I'm doing this in the first place. So when you have something like this, it makes it super easy to do the next step, and it guarantees you're doing the right amount of work at the right time. So again, for me, this is like literally I'm showing you exactly what I did last year to hit my 341 20-minute power after I just did 3 blocks that looked like just like this. So my TSS goals were a little higher, but I mean, this is exactly what I was doing. So hopefully that didn't seem too hard, but it does get results. These are some of what my athletes are saying after trying other different things. I have them all doing this type of training. Like you can see, a 34 watt increase in FTP. I'm able to go longer rides faster without feeling worn out. That is very consistent with all my athletes. I have one athlete, his power's been growing 10 to 12% every 2 months, which is way cool. When you see athletes getting numbers like this, 34 watt increase in FTP, it is very, very fun. So, okay, so the next step after we have done that spreadsheet is to do your next block with workouts. This is where we get more specific. And this is actually typically where everyone starts, but when you have a guide, it makes it so much easier. So this process for me usually takes about 15 to 30 minutes, and I do it kind of just once a month, once a block. I find it extremely valuable for getting my head in the game for what I'm about to do and the focus. It's a process of writing down goals. It's very, very valuable that I found. This is where I think a lot of other methods fail, because your head just isn't there as much. You're just doing what the plan says, or you're just kind of doing whatever. But here you're actually sitting down, you're setting time to kind of do a little bit of a strategy, and it pays off tremendously. So it's actually quite easy once you have a properly done annual training plan. These are my steps. I just transfer that pattern that we've already decided. I set my workout time in zones, and then I adjust my zone 2 workouts to hit the weekly TSS goal that I've already talked about. So let's see it in action. So here I have a little screenshot from my ATP. Hopefully you guys are still following me here. But here's a little screenshot from my ATP just for one block where I have my patterns. And the first step, and then down here is a screenshot from Training Peaks. The first thing I do is I just set the pattern. It's just a matter of transferring stuff over. So I'll see that I have a zone 2, a sweet spot, and a zone 2. So all I do is I go into my folder where I have those workouts, and I just drop and drag them into Training Peaks. The times aren't set correctly. The specifics on the type of workout, on the duration of the workout is not set, but it's just a matter of just plopping that stuff in there. And I already have the makings of something that's looking to be pretty cool. So the next thing I do after that is I set my workout time in zones. And these are for all my intervals that I've kind of already set up. So those would be sweet spots. And on this one I have sweet spots and I have tempo. So what I do is I will say, and I have like kind of guides on this stuff. You'll figure out when you start training yourself kind of like how much sweet spot you can handle at a time. This is kind of like an athlete who's pretty fit and is just trying to build fitness. 48 minutes a sweet spot is a really good place to start. 30 minutes might be a little better if you're just starting out, but I'm doing a progressive overload on my time in zone. So you can see I go 48, 60, and 72 minutes. This is pretty much standard type of increments. So once you figure this out, it's basically how you do it. And then, so we're saying we want to do 48 minutes, and then I just adjust the workout, or just go into the workout and just type in 12 minutes for each interval. And then I'll go to the next one down, and I'll bring that one up, and I'll just click 15 minutes, and then so forth for the next one. And this is how I do it. I have progressive overload on my tempo workouts as well. And now we have that all established. So then the last step is another thing. Now most people get really hung up on, or really focused, I should say, on intervals and what they're doing on their intervals. But the next step, in my opinion, is actually the most important. And this is where I missed it for probably 15 years. So, and that is, oh, hold on. I'm sorry. I got a little ahead of myself there. I have a quick note on time and zones. This is actually very important. There's a mindset shift that's required when you're doing this kind of stuff, and you're setting up how long you're going to be on sweet spot, for example. And that shift is from what the plan says to do. This is kind of where our brains have been trained, is to whatever the plan says to do, you do. And that shift goes to how long I can push yourself or myself. This is where self-training comes into play. When you're going to a gym and you're doing the bench press, you're not just going to do the bar because that's what a plan says. You're going to try to push yourself to the max. And so that's kind of what this time in zone part, this is actually very important. You should be pretty cooked at the end of a sweet spot workout. I don't want you to feel like you've got more in the tank. If you feel like you could have done more, you need to do it. This is where there is a huge, huge opportunity. I don't want to stress that everyone's different, but this was kind of a game changer for me. Last January, I just set a goal for myself 3 months out that I wanted to do 120 minutes with sweet spot. That seemed like a pretty audacious goal. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to hit it, but I actually put a 120 minute 6x20 workout in 3 months ahead of time, and that was always in the back of my mind. So that helped me to push through some hard moments. I was actually able to do it on like literally the last week. But this kind of stuff, this helps you to really push yourself beyond what you think you might be able to do. This is game changer type stuff. So let me go to this last step here. Adjust your zone 2 workouts to hit weekly TSS goals. So here's another screenshot right here at the top of your annual training plan and the ramp rates that we talked about, and you're increasing your TSS per week. Basically, how much stress that your body is absorbing and adapting to in a week. We got numbers from that. Like I said, this was where I recommend about 5% increase per week. We now have weekly TSS goals. And the objective now is to adjust all your zone 2 workouts, basically make them longer until we hit these weekly TSS goals that we've already set up. So I'll just go into all my zone 2 workouts, and depending on my schedule, I'll just make some longer than others. So for example, if Thursdays are pretty busy days for me, I'll just kind of keep it at an hour. If Tuesday is the day when I have a little bit more time, and just as an example, I adjusted it out to an hour and a half. Saturdays they just seem to be the day to get in long zone 2 rides. And so you can see that's where I put the longest for this one. And then basically what you do is Training Peaks also automatically calculates your TSS based on the duration, and you just kind of tweak with the length of time until you hit the goals that you've kind of already set up for yourself in your annual training plan. And this is just totally slick. Once I figured this out, it was like, oh, now I know how to get in the right amount of zone 2 every week. This is pretty cool. So here's my little quick note on weekly TSS goal. I think I already covered this first bullet. I will tell you that hardly anyone does enough zone 2. Positive. If this process makes sure you're getting in 70-80%. Most people see zone 2 as low priority, but I will tell you right now that it should be your top priority. It's really important to focus on zone 2 for building a huge aerobic engine. You don't get generally burnt out from it, and the gains are just awesome. If you take nothing else from this webinar, I would just say do more zone 2. So also zone 2 are not just group crush sessions. So anyway, so then you ride your bike and just follow along. Post at Training Peaks, Strava with pics. Yay, happy day. Then you make your minor adjustments as needed. When you've made the plan, you have a better understanding of how you will adjust that. You do minor adjustments for big gains. For aerobic intervals, like I said, you should be pretty cooked. Zone 2, stay in your zone the whole time. This is really important. And I didn't mention here that once per block, I do like to get some intensity in, and I recommend doing this through some type of a group ride or outside ride with climbing or something similar once per week. So when the block does not go perfectly, and this happens, resist the urge to make major changes in the middle of the block. Don't try to make up workouts. This is almost backfires. Just resume where you left off, and this will happen. Never ever allow yourself to miss 2 workouts in a row. This rule has saved me because once you start missing 2, it's a lot easier to miss a third. And then, like I said, if an interval workout is too easy or too hard, consider changing that one. So that is how you plan a block. We did it. I did it, and I explained that in 30 minutes. In reality, though, your ATP generally takes about 45 minutes. I do it once every 6 months or so. What really takes the time is figuring out your race schedule and events. My training block generally takes about 30 minutes once per month. I could do it quicker, but it's kind of fun once you start getting into it. You'll end up paying a lot more attention to what you're doing, and it's helpful to understand the big picture. You'll actually end up learning what works for you. You can ramp things up faster by using RampRite or dial things back depending on your individual situation. This works really well for complicated work life type stuff. This process actually works for different types of training philosophies. I recommend kind of following this pattern when you're starting, but you can do all kinds of different fun stuff if you want to experiment later on. But learn this stuff now, this process, and you can have it for 5, 10, 15, 20 years and just really have fun with it. So this is what 10 years looks like on a calendar. This is how I see things now. The short-term thinking on hey, check out this 8-week plan or 12-week plan, it's very short-sighted. And I'm really thinking about cycling for the long term. So if you look at a calendar like this is kind of like, do you want to learn or do you want to just kind of like hope for the best? Do you want to figure things out now and take that forward with you, or do you want to just kind of do things how you've been doing? So, but this is not theory, this stuff. It's a process you can implement in the coming seasons. You don't need to understand complex training principles or exercise physiology, like I have said. Hopefully you kind of got that out. You got that, you kind of figured that out. But it's about following a system, really, to make sure you're getting in the right work and not figuring it out for yourself. It's about tailoring your training to you, not doing what the masses are doing. This is actually how you realize your full potential. And this is kind of why I'm putting this whole thing together. And you actually end up having a great time doing it because you're not a slave to someone else's plan. So, and then here, another interesting tidbit. Did you know writing down your goals, those who write down their goals are much more likely to achieve them. So if you struggle with consistency, I would recommend something kind of like this. The more specific your goals and the higher your chances as well. So this is kind of at the heart of this whole system. You're forced to write out your daily goals. It's been a game changer for me. So So now just kind of shifting gears, getting into kind of the program that I'm putting on here. If you're thinking you're ready to try this, you want to kind of take this stuff. This interests you. What should you do next? You're I think you're ready. So the strategy I just gave you is just how to build a custom base plan. You can kind of see what it's all about. There's a little bit more to executing this for a whole year, but now you have a good idea. So if you're kind of thinking like you want to, this might be something for you. You kind of have two options here. This is actually a pretty cool opportunity for you to learn this system in depth and actually apply it in this coming season and have something that you can really build on. So I want to mention, this is important. If you decide to work with me, and if you know me, I don't really hold anything back. I don't miss steps. You would just need to follow my lead step by step. Like I said right there in the beginning, I'm on a mission to help you become a fit cyclist for life. Remove all the headaches from figuring this stuff out on yourself, on your own, so that you can get the most from the sport on your terms. So that's what the program is about. It's about empowering you with everything you need to know. In the program, we'll go into obviously more detail on your annual training plan. You'll get the spreadsheet. I'll go into more detail, obviously, on planning blocks. You'll get all my pre-built workouts that I've been building up over the years. More pattern options, how to measure. We'll talk about how to measure your progress easily, because that is important. We'll talk about the basics of on the bike nutrition. This stuff is not nearly as complicated as YouTube tells us. And we'll talk about some basic off the bike nutrition to kind of get you started. We'll talk a little bit more in detail about race and taper planning, as well as equipment setup and the whole mental game. So the program is, how I have it outlined, is 7 weeks, one session per week of training, about 1 to 2 hours. All the training will be recorded. You'll have lifetime access to those and all updates. You'll also have lifetime access to a private Facebook group for support and questions, along with an ongoing weekly Q&A session on Zoom that I want to call. I think this part of the support part of the program, not just learning how to do it, but having someone to answer questions, is actually a really important part as you're learning this stuff. So you thinking, why am I doing this? So in the world of cycling training, I see a lot of solutions that are all basically kind of the same. Follow this 8-week plan, join this program, or you're riding lots. But few are really aimed at empowering you for the journey to lifelong cycling fitness. So I see so many opportunities with that stuff to get results, to stay fit on the bike, and to really realize your full potential, while keeping yourself healthy. And this kind of stuff bugs me. So I find a ton of satisfaction in helping cyclists. It's kind of like it's really my mission right now. And I think this is where I can help you the most. And so this is what I've come up with. So there is an interview process with this. It's really important. I don't want just any athletes. I want the right athletes. We're kind of in this together. I'm inviting you into a program for the lifetime, so it's important that I feel comfortable with you as well. Really, I feel like the better the fit, the better the results. I am building a legacy business. I don't want just any client. I want the right client. So if you want in, here's how the process works. Who's it for? This is for, as I'm really thinking about who this is for cyclists who have decided that they want this, they're in their sport for the long term. I think you've probably gotten that. I also want you to believe that you have untapped potential and you have a commitment to putting in the work to see it. I want you to be self-motivated and self-reliant. You do need to have or buy a power meter to really take advantage of this stuff. And I do want people who are actually going to implement these training strategies. I really don't want people who are just in it for the information. I want to see you really taking an event and really doing this work. And I also want you to be feel like you're part of a community of like-minded cyclists. I want you to want that, and treat it kind of like you're on a team. Now, I'm not, obviously you're going to have you can be on your own local teams and all that, but this is kind of like, I envision this as your own private training team where you can really support each other. It's really, really important that this community that I'm building here is a bunch of like-minded cyclists with similar goals, and that we support each other in our journeys. So if this is something that you're interested in, the application deadline here is 10/28. That's a week from Friday. That's the last day that I'm doing these interviews. So what you can do if you're interested in applying is you go to trailcycling.com, and you'll see there at the very top, there'll be a red button to schedule a call. Just click that button and it brings you to my little Calendly scheduler, and just find a time that works for you. So the call will last about 45 minutes. I really want to understand in detail where you are and where you ultimately want to go. We'll decide if this is a good fit for both of us, and it has to be a good fit for you and for me. So let me see here. So I'm going to actually be really excited to meet you if you want to get on a call. And that's it for this little presentation here. I want to open it up for questions, and I'll leave on the screen for Q&A here. Okay, and I don't think that person is really actually interested in training, but if you guys want to, you guys have any Q&A or questions in the chat, I'm here. And I know there is a little bit of a delay, so I have to wait. There's about 45 seconds. So, okay. Eric, are you an advocate for 2 days completely off the bike, or doing active recovery rides on the off days? Okay, so for the longest time, I did recovery rides, and from my own experience and from what I see from athletes, there's not a whole lot of bang for your buck there. So I have been doing 2 days completely off the bike for the last year and a half, and I seem to do it's better for recovery. So I know that the pros are really into the active recovery stuff, but it's just over 19 years I've kind of come to the point where I'm just like, I'm not a pro. It's better use of my time just to kind of kick my feet up and relax a little bit. So let me see if there's any other questions in there. Oh, hey, John, by the way. Any questions on that process? I'll wait a little bit longer. I can't believe I was able to get through that in an hour. If you guys if you guys missed anything, like I said, I'll as soon as this is over, YouTube should save it for you if you want to go back and see anything. And so, all right. Well, I don't see any more questions, so we will we'll wrap it up. Thank you very much. Oh, there's one. What about weight training in the off season? Very good question, John. Weight training is going to be a part of this program in the future, but not for this first go around. I haven't really thought through. It can be a little complicated, and I want to simplify it for you. What I'm thinking is for this first round, when you're really just starting off, if you can figure out how to do base, how to do a whole season, I will have a weight training. I'll figure out how to make this work for weight training as well, and that will be included for any people who are signing up for the program in this first go around here. You'll end up getting that at some point. This isn't really about I'm not going to charge extra for it, but we will definitely talk about weight training at some point. I just haven't figured out how to get it in the program efficiently. So let me see. Another question. How do you know where to start with TSS? That is an awesome question. I have a little chart on where to start. I don't have, it's not really available to me right now, but I have a little chart on where to start. If you're training, if you've been riding an average of 3 hours, I can give you a starting place there. So, John, I can actually email you that chart if you'd like. So. Okay, I'm going to wait a little bit longer just because there's a 45-second delay. I don't want to miss someone's question. Oh, hey, Ruben. I see Ruben's on there, Salt Lake. Dan. Okay, I think we're good with questions. Thank you very much, guys, for joining. I appreciate it. I hope to hear from some of you soon. And with that, we'll wrap it up. Have a good night, and